Well, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Today, let me speak in English on the issues raised by the international renowned scholars and also high-ranking bureaucrats, especially those who want to hear my comment in English. For those who want to hear my English comment on international issues. Today, I'm speaking in English, so please understand my intention, those who do not understand English in Korea. Today, I want to speak on a newly published article written by Anthony Blinken, Secretary of State, which was released on November-December issue 2024 on Foreign Affairs, the magazine, by the title of America's Strategy of Renewal, Building Leadership for a New World. According to the article, international arena is going through a fierce competition. A fierce competition is underway to define a new age in international affairs. So, a small number of countries, principally Russia, with the partnership of Iran and North Korea, as well as China, are determined to alter the fundamental foundational principles of the international system, while their forms of governance, ideologies, interests, and capabilities differ on each situation. These revisionist powers all want to entrench autocratic rule at home and assert spheres of influence abroad. They all wish to resolve the territorial dispute by coercion or force and weaponize other countries' economic and energy dependence. And they all seek to erode the foundations of the United States' strength, its military and technological superiority. So, as we all understand, when President Joe Biden and the Vice President Kamala Harris, who is now a Democratic Party's candidate for president in the United States, came into office, these revisionist powers were already aggressively challenging U.S. interests. These countries believed that the United States was in an irreversible decline at home and divided from its friends abroad. They saw an American public that had lost its faith in government, an American democracy that was polarized and paralyzed, and an American foreign policy that was undermining the very alliances, international institutions, and the norms that Washington had built and championed in the last several decades. President Biden and Vice President Harris pursued a strategy of renewal, pairing historic investment in competitiveness at home with an intensive diplomatic campaign to revitalize partnerships abroad. This twin-pillared strategy, they believed was the best way to disabuse competitors of their assumptions that the United States was declining and diffident. These are dangerous assumptions. That the United States was declining and diffident. These were very dangerous assumptions, since they would lead the revisionists to continue undermining the free, open, secure, and prosperous world that the United States and most countries seek. It's a world where countries are free to choose their own path and partners, and where the global economy is defined by fair competition, openness, transparency, and broad-based opportunity. A world where technology empowers people and accelerate human progress. A world where international law, and including the core principles of the UN Charter, is upheld and universal human rights are respected. A world that can evolve to reflect new realities, give a voice to emerging perspectives and players, and meet the standard challenges of the present and future. This is quite a heavy task, challenged by all dark influential groups in world politics. Can UN really deal with these kind of difficulties? Another question. So a new age of international politics has already arrived, reflecting those dark ages of Cold War structures of 7 years, like that. So the United States strategic fitness rests in large measure on its economic competitiveness now. So a lot of domestic investment. These domestic investment constituted the first pillar of the Biden administration's strategy, and they have helped American workers and businesses power the strongest U.S. economy since the 1990s. And as we all know, the United States GDP is larger than that of the next three countries combined. And this investment in American competitiveness and the success of the United States rebound are powerfully attractive. You all understand. After Congress passed the CHIPS and Science Act and the Inflation Reduction Act in 2020, the largest ever investment in climate and clean energy, South Korea's Samsung committed tens of billions of dollars to manufacturing semiconductors in Texas. Japan's Toyota put billions of dollars toward making electric vehicles and batteries in North Carolina. All five of the world's top semiconductor manufacturers have pledged to build their plant in the United States, investing $300 billion and creating over 100,000 American jobs. So, the United States is now the world's largest recipient of foreign direct investment. It is also the largest provider of the foreign direct investment, showing the unmatched power of the American private sector to expand economic opportunity around the world. So, the friends of the United States well understand that this kind of United States strategy to make all the allied powers united again in terms of economics. And it has allowed the United States and its friends to continue driving technological innovation and setting technological standards that are crucial to safeguarding their shared security, values, and welfare. So, United States is, really protecting those partners in peace. And the second pillar of the Biden administration strategy was to reinvigorate and reimagine the United States network of relationships, enabling Washington and its partners to pool their strength in advancing a shared vision of the world and compete vigorously yet responsibly against those seeking to undermine it, including People's Republic of China, Iran, North Korea, nowadays Russia. Those countries allied to this kind of totalitarian, authoritarian state. Competing responsibly, meanwhile, means maintaining channels of communication to prevent competition from veering into conflict. It means making clear that the United States goal is not regime change, and that even as both sides compete, they must find ways to coexist. It means looking for ways to cooperate when it serves the national interest, and it means competing in ways that benefit the security and the prosperity of friends instead of coming at their expense. So China is the only country with the intent and the means to reshape the international system, challenging the established order made by the United States. So United States set up dedicated channels with France to share Washington's assessment of the economic and security risks posed by Beijing's policies and actions, especially by the name of One Road, One Belt initiatives, also Xi Jinping's very aggressive foreign policies. Also, on Russia, United States had no illusions about President Vladimir Putin's revanchist aims or the possibility of a reset. United States did not hesitate to act forcefully against Moscow's destabilizing activities, including its cyber attacks, interference in U.S. elections. At the same time, the U.S. worked to reduce nuclear danger and the risk of war by extending the New START treaty and launching a strategic stability dialogue. The U.S. was similarly clear-eyed when it came to Iran and North Korea, as I mentioned before. So, United States made a clear willingness, to engage in direct talks with North Korea, but also that we would not submit to this saber-rattling of its preconditions, which is not effectively working nowadays on the issue of nuclear brinkmanship made by North Korea. The number of North Korean nuclear weapons possibly reaching more than 50, something like that nowadays. So, Secretary of State Anthony Blinken wrote that we worked to realize the full potential of these partnerships in 4 ways. First, we recommend to the countries' core alliances and partnerships. President Biden reassured the NATO allies that the United States would honor its pledge to treat an attack on one as an attack on all. Reaffirmed the country's ironclad security commitment to Japan, South Korea, and other allies in Asia, and restored the G7 to its role as the steering committee of the world advanced democracies. Second, we infused U.S. alliances and partnerships, Blinken said, with new purpose. We elevated the partnership with Australia, India, and Japan and took concrete steps to realize a shared vision for a free and open Indo-Pacific, from enhancing maritime security to manufacturing safe and effective vaccines. A lot of initiatives by the United States. Anthony Blinken continues to mention that we raised the ambition of critical bilateral relationships, such as U.S.-India strategic partnerships, and revived regional engagement with President Biden, hosting summit with leaders from Africa, Latin America, the Pacific Island, and Southeast Asia. Also, Anthony Blinken says that we made NATO bigger, stronger, and more united than ever by giving them a lot of trust through policies made by the United States Congress. So Blinken said that we created also AUKUS, a trilateral defense partnership, through which Australia, the United States, and the United States, New Zealand, and the United States have teamed up to build nuclear-powered submarines and deepen their scientific, technological, and industrial cooperation. And the fourth, Blinken said that we built new coalitions to address new challenges. We rallied a variety of government, international organizations, businesses, and civil society groups to manufacture and distribute hundreds of millions of free COVID-19 vaccines, and successfully dealt with those crises. Also, through the Summit of Democracy, bringing together democratic leaders and reformers from every region, the United States has made concrete steps. So this kind of works by Biden administration with the rest of the G7 to develop governance frameworks for AI and led them more than 120 countries, including China, in the UN General Assembly to craft and pass the first ever UN resolution on leveraging AI for good, dialoguing even socialist countries for AI issues. So what shall the United States do for deterring, this kind of revisionism, challenging the United States, positions in international politics, It is very, desperate and critical to deal with this kind of revisionist policies raised by those authoritarian state. Especially in the Biden administration's first year, the United States made significant progress in deepening alignment with allies and partners on U.S. approach to strategic competition. Conversations in allied capitals led to a palpable shift. For example, in negotiations to shape a new strategic concept for NATO, Tony Blinken saw that the allies were, for the first time, intensively focused on the challenge China posed to transatlantic treaty and values. So, in his discussions with officials from allied countries in East Asia, he heard them grappling with how to respond to Beijing's coercive behavior in the South China Sea and Taiwan Strait. Also, Russia's President Putin's decision to try to wipe Ukraine off the map, along with China's decision first to provide Russia with cover and then fuel its aggression, accelerated the convergence of views among Asian and European countries about the seriousness of the threat and collective action required to address. United States led all the coalition forces to deter these kind of authoritarian state, military attacks and alliances on the issue of Ukraine. The United States created the Ukraine Defense Contact Group, which grew to more than 50 countries, working with Ukrainian military to fill urgent needs, and a broad coalition of countries imposed most ambitious sanctions ever, freezing more than half of Russia's sovereign asset. Because it was an attack not just on Ukraine, but also on the principles of sovereignty and territorial integrity at the heart of the UN Charter. The US acted in a responsible way. On the issue of North Korea's military help to Ukraine, North Korea delivered a trainload of weapons and ammunition, including millions of artillery rounds and ballistic missiles and launchers, in direct violation of multiple UN Security Council resolutions. Iran also built a drone factory in Russia and sent to Moscow hundreds of ballistic missiles, and the Chinese companies quickened their supply of the machines, microelectronics, and other dual-use items Russia needed to churn out weapons, munitions, and other material. How serious this kind of confrontation between the allied powers led by the United States and also those socialist blocs, authoritarian blocs, countering these kind of moves. Very serious, very serious. China, Russia, Iran, and North Korea have complicated histories and divergent interests, and their partnerships with one another do not come close to the United States' long-standing alliance architecture. It is contrary to that. And all four revisionist states share an abiding commitment to the overarching objective of challenging the United States and the international system, and that will continue to drive their cooperation, especially as the United States and other countries stand up to their revisionism. So, the Biden administration's answer to this growing alignment has been to accelerate convergence among the allies about the threat. So, United States made NATO bigger, stronger, and more united than ever, with the alliance welcoming in Finland and Sweden despite their long history of non-alignment. At the start of the administration, 9 of the 30 NATO members were meeting their commitment to spend 2% of their GDP on defense. This year, at least 23 of 32 allies will meet that mark. So, Anthony Blinken wrote in the Foreign Affairs saying that we have deepened and modernized U.S. alliances in the Indo-Pacific, strengthening the U.S. military forces' posture and capabilities by signing new agreements to upgrade bases from Japan to the Philippines to the South Pacific. And we have found new ways to weave allies together. This year alone, as we see, the U.S. hosted a trilateral summit with Japan and the Philippines at the White House, where the three parties committed to deepening joint efforts to defend freedom of navigation in the South China Sea, creating more and more networks, countering those authoritarian states, aggressive military moves. So what is the great convergence? A lot of states are joining, hands by hand. Japan has committed more than 12 billion US dollars in assistance to Ukraine. And in June, it became the first country outside Europe to sign a 10-year bilateral security agreement with Kiev. Australia has provided more than 1 billion US dollars in military aid to Ukraine and is part of a multinational coalition training Ukrainian personnel in the United Kingdom. South Korea has declared that it will consider supplying weapons to Ukraine in addition to the considerable economic and humanitarian support it is already providing. So the US Indo-Pacific partners are cooperating very seriously. Meanwhile, China's support for Russia and the administration's innovative use of intelligence diplomacy to reveal the breadth of that support had further focused the US allies in Europe on the threat posed by Beijing. The massive economic disruption caused by Putin's invasion has made real the catastrophic consequences that would result from a crisis in the Taiwan Strait, through which roughly half of the world's commercial container ships pass every year. More than 90% of the world's most advanced semiconductors are manufactured in Taiwan. So we are united by the name of universal values, democracy, something like that. China's aggressive One Road and One Belt initiatives have been checked and balanced by the United States foreign policies. So Anthony Blinken says that as Secretary of State, I do not do politics, I do policy. Which means that through the U.S. foreign policy implementation, United States, value-oriented diplomacy is working effectively. This is my comment. This year, the Biden administration raised targeted tariffs on Chinese steel and aluminum semiconductors and critical minerals, as opposed to sweeping tariffs across the board that raise costs for American families, and the European Union and Canada imposed tariffs on Chinese electric vehicles. These kind of moves are also helping the U.S. foreign policy effectively implemented. A lot of policies being implemented as of now. So the global coalition supporting Ukraine is the most powerful example of burden sharing Tony Blinken has ever seen in his career, while the United States has provided 94 billion US dollars in support for Ukraine since the Putin's full-scale invasion. European, Asian, and other partners have contributed nearly 148 billion US dollars. Huge amount. The United States is in a demonstrably stronger position in both consequential regions today because of the bridge of allies we have built. This is very important, I think. This is very important. So to deal with revisionism across the regions, all the allied partners are working very closely. The revisionist alignment in playing out even more intensively in the Middle East. We see nowadays war between Israel and Hezbollah backed by Iran. Strengthening ties with Hamas. Those, Islamic State are allied with Iran are making international order also unstable. The Biden administration, for its part, has been working tirelessly with partners in the Middle East and beyond to end the conflict, the suffering in Gaza, find a diplomatic solution that enables Israelis and Lebanese to live in safety in both sides of the border, manage the risk of a wider regional war, and work toward a greater integration and normalization in the region, including between Israel and Saudi Arabia. But still, the effort has not proven we have benefited from those policies as of now, but still continuing. Gaza continues to be devastating. Tens of thousands of Palestinian civilians have been killed in a conflict. Even they have been killed as of now. The entire population of Gaza has been displaced, and the vast majority is suffering from malnutrition. A lot of problems there. So we should solve these kind of issues. So Anthony Blinken, Secretary of State, he wrote in the Foreign Affairs article by saying that G7 countries launched the Partnership for Global Infrastructure and Investment in 2020. The initiative will eventually unlock $600 billion in private capital to fund the projects that are high quality and environmentally sound and empower the communities where they are built. So the U.S. is coordinating investment in railroads and ports to connect the Philippines' economic hubs and turbocharge investment in the country. Angola's port, Congo, Zambia. The U.S. is also spending a lot of money against those spent by the One Road, One Belt strategy of China. So we are rebuilding our coalitions around the world. The United States is teaming up with partners to build and broaden digital infrastructure so that countries don't want to give up their security and privacy to gain high-speed and affordable internet connections. Also, working with Australia, Japan, New Zealand, and Taiwan, Washington has invested in cables. The U.S. has also sought to make international institutions more inclusive. Imperfect as the United Nations and other such bodies may be, there is no substitute for their legitimacy and capabilities. Participating and in reforming them is one of the best ways to buttress the international order against effort to tear it down. That is why under the Biden administration, the United States rejoined the World Health Organization, the UN Human Rights Council, and UNESCO. Also, trying to seek a permanent seat, Germany, India, Japan in the United Nations to make international systems more stable, reflecting changes of power structures in international relations. So Anthony Blinken emphasizes in concluding by saying that time and again, the Biden administration has demonstrated that the United States is the country others can rely on to help solve their biggest problems. When the war in Ukraine exacerbated the global food security crisis, for example, the United States invested $17.5 billion to tackle food insecurity and rallied more than 100 countries to take concrete steps to address the challenge and its root causes. It did all this while continuing to be the largest donor by far of life-saving humanitarian and around the world. So at the home front, the US is doing their best also. Americans see principled and disciplined US leadership in the world as vital. So they are investing. They are spending money. So Blinken says, as Secretary of State, I don't do politics, but I do policy. And he's saying that policy is about choices. From day one, President Biden and Vice President Harris made a foundational choice that in a more competitive and combustible world, the United States cannot go alone or by itself. If America wants to protect its security and create opportunities for its people, it must stand with those who have a stake in a free, open, secure, and prosperous world and stand up to those who threaten that world. I think this is very good. The choices the United States makes in the second half of the decisive decade will determine whether this moment of testing remains a time of renewal or returns to a time of regression. Whether Washington and its allies can continue to outcompete the forces of revisionism or allow their vision to define the 21st century order. I think this article written by Anthony Blinken, Secretary of State, has analyzed the current issues and the strategies of the United States as well as those allies, pursuing universal values of democracy and market economy against revisionist, state, challenges, including China, North Korea, Iran, Russia, and so on. So how to make international systems stable? How to make international systems stable are the most important tasks of all the leading powers in the world politics, including the United States, and those who are benefited from the open, free international system. Today, I analyzed the international system issues and what are the problems and what are the solutions and what's going on around the world, especially by reviewing the article written by Secretary of State Anthony Blinken's article, which was published in the Foreign Affairs October-November issue. Thank you and have a nice lunch. It was a long analysis. Thank you.